I'm Alad Gilo, one of the co-founders of Reach. Cold Email Hot Takes is a mini video series in which we talk to inspiring sales leaders about their approach to outbound sales. In this week's episode, we're honored to be joined by Patrick from ChargeBee. Can you quickly introduce yourself, Patrick?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Alad. As mentioned, I'm Patrick, work at ChargeBee. We offer a subscription management solution. And I started my career in banking, made a transition to SaaS sales, and work in the fintech industry for 3 years now.
Amazing. Yeah, no, we know that you have a ton of experience, especially doing outbound and especially as an account executive. And so I'm excited to chat with you. We follow your content on LinkedIn a lot. So this is going to be a great episode. I just want to dive right in. One of the things that we see a lot in our own outreach, right, is that people are often overwhelmed by the amount of emails they're receiving, right? I think there are more and more reps in the world sending more and more cold emails. I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you do to kind of stand out from that?
Yeah, sure. I think it begins with the subject line, as so often, right? So people consistently tell you need to use 3 to 4 words in the subject line. I agree with this. So you need to keep it short. I have an open rate currently at least of 65 to 75% with my cold emails, which is due to the fact that I make it look like an internal email. Now, I don't go for subject lines like ChargeBee for Tim or, Tim meets ChargeBee, but more like if I reach out to a CFO, I use a subject line like new sales hires because they are hiring for new sales reps, or financial reporting, revenue recognition. Words like this, trigger words for a CFO, so that they have at least to open a mail. And this is where the actual fun begins, right?
Absolutely. So beyond, so that's great. So you kind of do these I guess these sly subject lines that make it feel more like an internal email, that kind of make it seem less of like a traditional cold outreach, right? That you're about to sell them something. Beyond that, are there things that you do in the first couple lines? Because obviously we're familiar with kind of that preview. People are often looking at emails on their phones. Do you think about those first couple lines as well, or is it primarily the subject?
I do. We have all been reading this content for the last couple of years on LinkedIn. You need to start with personalization, then you need to figure out the challenge. You need to sort of bring in the value of your company or the solution and close with a low call to action. The problem is everyone is doing this nowadays, so you got to stand out. What I do is I look for these leaders on social, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatsoever, and try to find a hobby of theirs or a pet, something they like doing. Anything can be relevant. What I do now is, for instance, in Bavaria, a lot of people like to go mountain climbing or skiing. So I just start my email with a joke. For instance, I see on a LinkedIn banner that someone was, having a trip in the mountains and made a nice photo of it. And then I start with, hey, John, I don't know, just saw that you appreciate a good mountain climb. I was wondering if your accountants are having a bad time climbing that subscription mountain. Something like that. So at least they continue reading. And then I finish it off with a funny call to action as well. Like, would you like my assistance to help your accountants go get to the next peak? Something like that. So I'm really I'm having fun with it, Yeah. It's not, it shouldn't feel boring to write it. This is when it's actually being relevant and funny for the leaders as well.
I love it. So yeah, this gets me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is, how do you approach personalization? And so this sounds like a really clever way. So you look for something that you found maybe on their LinkedIn profile or some other place, like on their social media. You make a reference to it, so you know something about them, but then you also tie in the next piece to it as well. So your value prop somehow ties in something about that hobby, right? So you said like, the difficulty of climbing this mountain of of subscription in some way. So you weave it into the body of your email. Is that right?
Exactly. So it can be funny, but it has to be relevant. Otherwise, It's just a waste of time for the leaders, right? So this is basically the hardest part, to make the connection between mountain climbing and subscription management, or baking cake, or I don't know, Formula One, whatever it is. But there is always some sort of connection. It only takes you 1 minute to figure it out if you have exercise with it or practice.
Yeah, I think as you get better with it, it probably gets faster and faster. That's really interesting. And is it always on on a lead level personalization, or do you also do account level personalization, something about the company in general, or not so much?
It, it really depends, honestly. You know, in Germany, you have a lot of people who are still not that active on LinkedIn and social. So you need to figure this out first. But I always try to find as much as possible. If I cannot find anything about the person, I go for the company. If I cannot find anything relevant for the company, I go for the industry.
Yeah.
And well, there it really gets a little bit harder to make jokes, right? So I really focus on a more relevant and strategic outreach for these people. But for the first approach, so the ICP, so to say, I go with founding outreach, and it really has good reply rates.
Amazing. Oh, that's a great approach. So I'm wondering, we've seen in our experience, especially even talking to various leaders in the space, kind of two different approaches when it comes to Tableau. Some people are really focused on what they perceive as adding value to the prospect. So they'll be sharing resources, blog posts, reports, whatever it may be to, in their view, add value. And others, on the other hand, try to really focus on creating empathy by showing their prospect that they really understand the problem that they're facing. I'm wondering what approach do you take if either of those kind of represent?
The second one usually. So my target persona is usually financial people. This is important to say because where personas can be very different. For me, it's mostly CFOs or other financial experts. And what I like to do is I try to focus on the company. I look at job ads, for instance. I do website research. We all know how that works. But I try to make a forecast for the future. How could this company look like in the next 6 months? And then I need to figure out what kind of challenges could they face in their subscription management. For example, if someone hires 1 new sales reps, it could be that their customer base is growing as well. So customer onboarding could become a challenge. And this is when I give them a cold call or a cold email and just, ask them, hey, I was wondering, how are you managing this and how do you look to manage it in the future? Just asking some open-ended questions around that. And this is what usually leads to my success.
Makes a ton of sense. No, I like that as well. I also choose that side as well, more in terms of focusing on the problem, really understanding that you understand something that might be keeping them up at night. And if you nail that in the right timing, it usually gets a response.
Yeah, exactly.
So one topic that I'm particularly interested in is this concept of sort of how to create urgency in deals and also just keeping up momentum, right? I think as an AE or anyone working on deals, right, we often will see that things either slow down after a while or, there's other stakeholders, there's more friction as you try to move things along. Are there things that you do to try to keep momentum going as you're talking to prospects or create urgency to kind of push things along?
Yes. So the first one might be super obvious, but I see it happening again and again that it's being ignored, which is bam, booking a meeting from a meeting, meaning do not leave a meeting with a prospect without booking the next one. Even if they say they're not sure, they have to align internally. Just tell them, hey, look, I need, at least a soft time slot so I can add my solutions consultant and we do not have to reschedule short notice or anything. I would just like to put it in. We still can discuss if it's really, really happening, but it creates some sort of commitment. So this would be my number one advice to create urgency. Unless you have another question around that.
No, that's great advice. So I think, basically every meeting should be moved to the next meeting or the next stage, if you will, of the funnel. And I think locking people into a commitment is a good way to do it. No, I think one of the things that we've learned in our experience is also focusing. That discovery call is often a great time to that's where we're really supposed to discover what are their real pains and the cost of that pain, right? And so the more that we can also frame our solution in terms of solving or quantifying even how much they will benefit, it's a great way to create that urgency. I think oftentimes in my experience with sales, things are often very vague. Yes, we'll help you. Yes, you'll benefit, but it's not easy to quantify all the time. The more we can quantify that by understanding in the discovery call what their pains and problems and challenges are, the easier it is to kind of get them motivated to kind of continue moving forward. That's been my experience anyway.
Definitely. This is the most strategic part, the discovery call overall is the most important part in the customer journey from my perspective. So the more challenges you can actually uncover, the easier it gets to keep the process moving.
Exactly.
Absolutely right.
So in your experience, is there, and I know this is somewhat of a vague question, but, when thinking in terms of outreach, are there, we see many sequences that could be 3 stages, 4 stages, 5 stages. Is there like an optimal amount of touch points in your view when reaching out, at least to your ICP, that you think works best? Do you have a few emails or a few LinkedIn messages, a few phone calls, or what works best for you?
I keep it very simple. I start with a cold call usually and move on with LinkedIn and cold email outreach. And then I really differentiate about the reactions. But long story short, my cadence usually has, I think, 12 to 14 steps, 12 to 14 steps, separated to 7 different days, I think, at the moment. And it will, last for 14 to 20 days. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't keep it too long. People will eventually tell you to not reach out anymore, and you will actually burn this lead. And I book my most meetings from the first outreaches. So I would really focus on first outreach and just reheat it again and again with cold calls and cold emails.
Are you? I don't know if this falls into your lap at all at your company, but are you involved in sort of this nurturing of these leads over time, or is that kind of more handled by the marketing team?
Oh no, I am. We usually keep accounts for 3 months, and if we see a buying signal, anything that makes us think that we could actually have an appointment or a call with this account, we might even work it for 1 year straight. So in this case, you really need to go a little bit deeper, maybe speak even with admins to get as much information as possible, to then come back with something solid and relevant to the CEOs, CFOs. The most important part here is do not repeat yourself all the time. As I mentioned in my first email, you might have this and that challenge. They didn't answer in the first place, so they won't answer again. You're just being annoying. It's important to find some sort of new angle, a new point of view, and show it to them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also using things in the news or things that you see on generally what's happening with the company can be great reasons to reach back out, right? Like, oh, I saw X happen at the company, or you grew 10% since the last time you reached out. You must have, something that kind of creates, explains the why now. Why am I contacting you now again, right? That can be helpful.
Absolutely. But also tough to stay on top of these things, right? Because you have a lot of accounts. So this is where Sales Navigator comes in handy. Absolutely. But I agree.
Yeah, no, Sales Navigator is this kind of I think this secret weapon for a lot of reps, and I think not even everyone is using it to its fullest potential, but there's unbelievable power there in terms of staying on top of any changing jobs, company updates, etc. We try to use that as well. So one thing I want to ask you quickly is if you're more in favor of a soft or a hard CTA. We see different opinions on this. I'm curious what your view is on it.
I use soft CTAs mostly, but I do not seek a meeting from my cold emails. My cold emails are more like a soft info about a challenge they might have and building trust around, me actually having done some research about this company. So usually for big accounts, I go with a cold email first to give proof that I actually spent time on the account. Then I follow up with a cold call for smaller accounts. So tier 2 and tier 3 accounts, I just use a cold call straight away. Anyway, I think soft CTAs, and this is for the German market, work better from my experience.
So are you saying, are they interested in kind of learning more? Or are you asking if they want to continue an exchange via email? What is your typical kind of framing around that?
Yeah, but pretty much it. Since we're speaking about it, what people do not like from my experience is these double negatives. Would it be completely crazy to have a chat next week? This is something that simply doesn't work, at least here. So you've got to be open, but you cannot ask for time. So it needs to be something like, would that be worth exploring? What do you think? Is that relevant for you? you can play with it a little. So it's not necessarily so important what exactly you say, but do not, comment too hard with any asks.
Yeah, no, that's been our experience as well. I think people are very protective of their time. So if you come out kind of guns blazing, it's like, hey, can we jump on a call? It's like that's the first thing that people are like, no, like I don't know you yet. I haven't built trust. I don't have a reason. So let's buy me dinner first. Then we'll then we'll maybe
Yeah, exactly. I like to keep it like I would like to be treated as a prospect, and I wouldn't like to be asked for time all the time by various people. So I want people to do some research first about me before they reach out. For instance, recruiters, and this is how I try to implement it as well.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Well, thanks so much, Patrick. This has been really, really eye-opening. A lot of great insights and advice. And yeah, we look forward to following you on LinkedIn some more and hearing more about your tips.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, take care.
Thank you. Take care.